Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy. Today, I want to go ahead and start laying turnouts. What I want to show you right now, though, is how I prepare the Electrofrog turnouts that I'm going to be using for installation. And after we go ahead and get this prepared, I'll show you how I install it here on the layout. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, before we get started, I want to ask you to take a second to subscribe. Click on the subscribe box, and when that comes up, click on the little bell right next to it and click all. That way you'll be notified every time that I upload a new video. Now, in a previous video, and I'll put a link to that right here, I talked about various types of turnouts and, the kind of modifications I make to them to make them DCC friendly so that I can install them on DCC layouts. And, the great thing about the Electrofrogs is you can use them either way as power routing or as all live turnouts. And I set mine up so they're all live DCC friendly. And, there's only a very few simple steps in order to do that and to do what I do. Because, what I do is a little different than what some others might do. But let me go ahead. I'm going to zoom in here on the workbench or on the top of the module, and we'll go ahead and get started with that process. Okay, I've zoomed in here so we can take a quick look at the modifications that I make to the turnout. Now, as these come, these Electrofrogs, they're actually designed to be power routing, but I want them to be all live. And in order to do that, we've got to make some changes. Okay, so the way these work is when the points are up against whichever stock rail they're touching, they pick up power from that particular rail. And in this case, it would be here. And it goes up through here and up into the frog, and everything along this path electrically becomes the same polarity. So this point and this point rail become the same polarity as this stock rail. And these closure rails are the same polarity all up into the frog, and then the frog rails are the same polarity. And that causes problems as far as these polarity issues. So what I want to do is make some cuts here and some changes so that each side is independently powered by the given stock rails. Now to do that, these come set up to do that, and there's their way to do it, and there's my way to do it. So I'll show you first their way. Okay, right here on the back, there's a notch in here, and it's almost impossible to see this, but down in that little notch, there is a small wire, a small jumper wire that you can cut. And if you cut both of those wires, you can see right here on this side, there's a little plastic insulator here. So that little jumper is what connects these two pieces of rail together. Once you cut through that, then everything on this side is independently powered, okay? They will not be connected through the frog. Now, all you have to do then is they've provided cutouts in the ties here. And if you make a connection between this stock rail and this closure rail, and this one, then these two will be the same polarity, and these two will be the same polarity all the time. And it will be independent of this physical contact here at the points. And that's a good thing, because all you need is a piece of ground foam or dirt or ballast or cat hair or anything to get in here, and you won't get an electrical contact. And that's the failing point in this system. Now, so by simply cutting that jumper, then that isolates this whole section of track, and this whole thing becomes the frog. Well, I don't like that, because still the frog is, all of these rails here are going to be the same polarity at any given time, controlled by the jumper that we will use here. And I'll show you that in a minute. But at any rate, what I prefer to do, and if you do it that way, then you have to use insulated rail joiners here. Otherwise, you will get a short when you connect this, or if you connect this, to adjoining rails, okay? So what I do is I go ahead and I make a cut right here and a cut right here. And what that does is that isolates this as the frog. And because these two frog rails are now independent of one another, they can be connected to the adjacent rails by soldering them through rail joiners, and they will be powered by those two rails independently. So you won't get any shorts here. Then the next thing here, since I did not cut, I do not make this cut right here, okay? And as a result, this rail will be the same polarity as this one, and this piece of rail will still be the same polarity as this one. So everything on this side is the same polarity, everything on this side is the same polarity. Because I make a cut here with my Dremel tool and a cut here, the frog itself becomes totally isolated and can be powered by a switch on a tortoise, or in this case, I'm going to be using a Blue Point controller. So those are the changes I make, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. Okay, I've got the turnout ready so that we can go ahead and begin the installation process here. Before we can do any modifications, though, I want to go ahead and get the position set on the for the turnout on the roadbed. Now, if you look right here on the bottom, there is a small wire right here on my finger, and that wire goes to the frog, and that's the wire that we will connect to our switch on the turnout controller, and that will allow us to control the polarity of the frog. So in order for us to use this wire, we have to make a hole through the layout and through the roadbed and the sub-roadbed, through the baseboard, so that we can make a connection. So in order to do that, I'm going to place the turnout exactly where it needs to be here on the layout. Okay, that. And if you look, this wire is at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th tie back from the end. So I'm going to count back 5 ties, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to mark the 4 corners on all sides of that wire, okay? Then we'll pull that up and make a mark connecting those 4 dots that we made here on the top of the roadbed. That dot then marks the spot where we want that wire to be. So I'm going to drill a hole right on through, like that, so that we'll be able to feed that wire through there. And we'll go ahead and, in a minute, I've got some green wire. And why am I using green wire? Well, because frogs are green. And that way, if we use the green wire, we'll always know that that green wire underneath of the layout is attached to our frog. Now, I went ahead and prepared one in advance. Okay, and we can run that wire down through here, assuming I can get it to feed through again. There it goes. Yeah, there it is. So we'll be able to use that wire to connect to our frog. Now, there's one other thing, though, we want to mark also and drill a hole for. So now I can use this turnout because I've got the hole drilled. Drop that in place. Okay, so it's going to be right there. Now, the other thing that we need to provide is a place for the wire that is going to control this turnout. Now, what I'm going to be using are these Blue Point controllers. And the way these work, they work very similar to a tortoise switch machine. So if you watch this swing arm here with the wire, when you push this manually, this changes and the wire moves, okay? And that's what will throw the points for you. Also note that on the bottom of it, it has this double pole, double throw switch. So this is a single pole, double throw switch. So it's half of that. And you'll see it's got a nice toggle that snaps. And that's the snapping sound you hear when I move the controller. But we need a way to feed this wire up through the baseboard and on up through the hole in our throw bar here on the turnout. So we need to be able to mark that location. So we've got it here, and what I'm going to do is I've got a one of my T-pins, and I'm just going to push that down right through here. You can see that location. I'm going to mark that here on the ties, and it's going to go right through the center here. Okay, so that's going to be my position. Okay, I can feel it went right in there. Now we're going to need a 1/4 inch hole through here. The instructions tell me that as long as the thickness of the roadbed and the baseboard and everything is less than 1.5 inches, you can use a 1/4 inch hole. If it's larger than that, if it's over 1.5 inches, you need a 3/8 inch hole. Okay, so now let me go ahead. We're going to mark that location right there. Again, I use a lot of these marking pins, but they're cheap. It's cheaper than making the mistake and doing it over again. Also, I'm going to open up a little bit of a hole here where that, so I don't rip my cork apart doing this. Okay, let's do this again. And we'll do it here. And let's see, what have I got I can use to pull this out with? There we go. And now we can go ahead and drill right on through with our 1/4 inch bit. Okay, that takes care of that. Okay, I went ahead and cleaned up that hole with my vacuum cleaner, and we're ready to go on. So now the wire can feed down through, and we'll be able to control the turnout using this controller. And we'll get around to installing this at another video, because I don't want to, this is going to take plenty of time as it is for this. Okay, so everything's in place now. Let's go ahead and start modifying the turnout itself. Now, as I said, I don't bother making this cut here. Instead, I'm going to use a Dremel tool to isolate my frog here and here so that I can control just this amount. And then these two rails will get power from the other two rails that they're going to be connected to here. And of course, this one is, this guy is going to be getting power from the stock rail through this closure rail. So we're good to go on that one. So I'm going to go ahead and make the cuts through the rails, isolating the frog. Okay, that's taken care of. So those rails are isolated now. Now let's go ahead and we'll go back here and cut on the other side of the frog. Okay, so that's prepared. Very simple, all there is to it. Clean that up just a little bit. Okay, so now because I have everything isolated, this frog can now be powered by that little wire, and these guys are individually powered because they're going to be connected here in a minute as soon as we make one more solder joint. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. So I just need a piece of solid wire, so I'm going to take a piece of solid wire here and strip off the insulation, and we'll cut that free. And we're going to use this to make the connection here. So I just need to measure how long that needs to be. I think I'll just cut this in half. Yep. And then we'll be able to solder right here. So I'm gonna pre-tin those positions on the rails in advance here, like so, and here, here, and again. Okay, and now we'll take the pieces of wire that I cut. Let me hold it in place with my so, and we'll come over to this side. Like that. Now that connection is made. And we get this short guy here. There. And we'll flip it around. Okay. Now, check those to make sure they're solid. Yep, good and solid. Okay, so now everything is going to be powered by the stock rails here to here. The point rails will be powered. The closure rails will be powered through that connection. So everything is going to be powered. Let me make a little cut here. There. Okay, so that's not visible any longer. Okay, so everything is ready to now go into place. Before we do that, though, let's go ahead and we need to prepare a wire here to connect to our frog wire. Okay, so now I'm going to take and let's pre-tin those two guys. That one, and we'll pre-tin this guy here. Okay, now, let's see if I can hold this in place. Well, I'm just going to have to do it like this, and hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Okay, we'll check that. Okay, we've got a good connection there. Now, I already have a piece of heat shrink tubing here. So I'm going to run that piece of heat shrink tubing down over the wire and over the connection that we just made. And that's mainly, I'm not worried about shorting. I just want to make sure that the joint is protected from flexing. There we go. Move it up on there and take it and heat shrink it just like that. That's all it takes. Okay, so now that's ready. I'll feed it down through the hole here that we previously cut and down underneath of the baseboard. Like that. Okay, so at this point, that turnout is now converted the way I want it to be. Now, and also I have my wire going to the frog, and I'll be able to control the polarity of that using the switch here on the bottom of that blue point controller, because that throws the polarity using this switch every time that I move that swing bar. Okay, now, at this point, it's all ready to go. All we have to do is glue it into place. But let me point out one other thing. Right here on these turnouts, and I doubt you can see it, I can barely see it. But right in here, there is a small little wire, and that serves as a spring that holds these points into place once they are thrown. Now, a lot of people cut these out, and I do that on my microengineering ones. I'm not sure that I need to anymore, but it's something that I picked up when I was using a thicker road bed. Previously, when I used some 2-inch foam. So that was something that I did at the time because it was so thick. But in this case, I won't need that. And I've tested this and found that the tension on this is enough so that it will actually throw these points without the spring being removed. So I'm going to go ahead and install it that way, and we'll give it a test later. Okay, so now how do I go about installing this? Well, let me mark position exactly here so that we've got it. So I'll know exactly where to put my adhesive, or where not to put my adhesive anyway, too. And so I'm going to have that clear right to here and to here. So I'm going to keep this area clear of adhesive so that that mechanism doesn't get fouled. And we'll run it up to here, and we'll run it up to there, of course. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and apply the adhesive. And I use the same adhesive here as I have on the rest of the layout. Let me see if it's going to spread out as I apply it. Yes. So that was just enough, okay? It doesn't take a lot of this to go a long way. It is a very good gripping adhesive. And you don't want it on here thick enough so that it's going to squeeze up in between your ties. You don't want that to happen. Okay, like that. That's all it takes. And now, with that in place, I'm going to go ahead and feed this wire back down through here again and pull it through from the bottom and feed through from the top. And put everything into place. Okay, there it is. Now, another tool that I have found, and I got this at an art supply store, and it's a roller. I'm not sure, it might be used for doing prints or something of that nature, but it's great for getting a good pressure on turnouts and other things. I also use it when I'm installing road bed. It does a good job of pressing it down. So that's all there is to it. Now, I'm just going to leave that. What I typically do is I will go ahead and apply install some of these pins on the turnout so it will be held firmly in place while that glue sets up. Okay, and that's all there is to it. So next, when we come back to this again, this will be all set up, and we'll go ahead and at some point, once we get the main bus wires installed, we'll come back and we'll start dropping feeders off of all of this stuff. I can't do anything else until I get all of these turnouts installed, because once the turnout's installed, then I can start adding the track in between them, and then we can go ahead, flip this sucker up on its side, and we can install the DCC bus wires and make the connections. We can install droppers, feeders from the turnouts, from the rails, from everything and start making all of those connections. So I'm not promising that that's going to be in a week because there's a lot to do here as far as that goes. So it might be 2 weeks before we get around to doing any wiring. But we're going to get there eventually. We're making progress. Okay, so that's how I go about preparing and installing Electrofrog turnouts. So I hope that gets you guys started on your layouts and answers the various questions that I have gotten over the last couple of years about how to install Electrofrog turnouts. Electrofrog turnouts are a very nice turnout. They're very well made and very well designed and easy to install on your layout and get good, reliable operation that is DCC compatible and DCC friendly.